The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky terrain of New Geneva as Sergeant Jake Morrison crouched behind a boulder, sweat dripping down his face. The sound of alien energy weapons crackling through the air filled his ears. 3 hours ago, his patrol had been conducting a routine survey of the frontier settlement when the HFY ships appeared in the sky like dark metal clouds. Morrison pressed his comm unit and spoke in a low voice. "Alpha Squad, lay down suppressive fire on that ridge. Don't worry about hitting anything specific. Just keep those alien heads down." From his position, he could see the strange bipedal creatures moving with fluid grace between the rocks. The HFY stood nearly 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs and metallic armor that seemed to shift colors in the sunlight. Their weapons fired beams of pure energy that could punch through concrete like paper. Suppressive fire? The voice that responded through his comm wasn't human. It carried a musical quality, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. What primitive concept is this? Morrison's blood ran cold. The aliens were listening to their communications. Private Chen poked his head up from behind a nearby rock. "Sarge, they're in our comm channel." "I can hear that, Chen." Morrison adjusted his rifle and fired a burst toward the alien position. The bullet struck the rocks around the HFY soldiers, sending chips of stone flying. "Keep shooting. Make them stay down." The alien voice returned, now filled with what sounded like amusement. "Your species cannot aim properly. How did you reach the stars with such poor weapon skills?" More human voices joined Morrison's frequency as other squads checked in. "Bravo team, spray and pray on the left flank." "Charlie squad, give me covering fire." "Just put rounds downrange and keep them pinned." The alien communications erupted with what could only be described as laughter. Morrison had studied the preliminary reports about HFY culture during the long journey to the frontier. They were a proud warrior race that valued precision above all else. Every shot they fired seemed to find its mark with deadly accuracy. Corporal Williams crawled up beside Morrison, dragging an ammunition case. "These guys think we're idiots, Sarge." "Let them think that." Morrison reloaded his rifle and signaled to his squad. "Team Alpha, concentrate fire on grid 7-7. Don't aim for the aliens. Hit the rocks around them." The humans opened fire in coordinated bursts. Bullets sparked off stone and metal, creating a wall of flying debris and noise. The HFY soldiers ducked lower behind their cover. "Fascinating," came another alien voice through the comm. "They waste ammunition with wild abandon. Do they even understand how weapons function?" Morrison smiled grimly. He could see the HFY commander through his scope, a tall figure with elaborate armor markings. The alien was gesturing to his troops, probably explaining human incompetence to his soldiers. "Sir," Chen called out, "I can see 3 of them trying to move up the left side." "Good. Delta Squad, put some rounds near that boulder cluster. Make it hot for anyone trying to advance." The Delta Squad leader's voice crackled through the comm. "Roger that. Laying down area denial fire." Gunfire erupted from multiple positions as the human squads created overlapping fields of fire. The HFY advance stopped immediately. Morrison watched as the aliens pulled back to their original positions. "These humans fire at empty ground," an alien voice observed. "Their tactical understanding appears limited to random violence." Morrison's radio operator, Specialist Park, looked confused. "Sarge, why are we letting them monitor our comms?" "Because they're learning the wrong lessons." Morrison checked his ammunition and scanned the battlefield. The HFY had superior weapons and technology, but they were fighting like individual hunters rather than a coordinated military force. The human firing continued in controlled bursts. Each squad targeted specific areas rather than individual enemies. The result was a network of dangerous zones that the HFY couldn't cross safely. "Commander?" A young HFY voice spoke through the channel. "Should we not advance and eliminate these poorly trained warriors?" "Patience," replied what Morrison assumed was their leader. "We will study their primitive methods before we destroy them." It is rare to encounter such an undeveloped military doctrine. Williams shook his head. "They really don't get it, do they?" "Not yet." Morrison watched as a group of HFY soldiers attempted to move between 2 large rocks. The moment they appeared, bullets from 3 different human positions forced them back to cover. "They think every shot should kill someone." The alien chatter continued, filled with discussions about human weapon malfunction and poor training. Morrison couldn't understand all the words, but the tone made their opinions clear. The HFY seemed genuinely puzzled by human tactics. "Bravo, leader to Alpha," came a voice through the comm. "We've got movement on the right flank. Looks like they're trying to circle around." "Copy that, Bravo. Charlie team, shift fire to support right flank defensive positions." The sound of gunfire shifted as the human squads adjusted their fields of fire. The Kethvar flanking attempt stalled as bullets filled the air around their intended path. "Most curious?" An alien voice mused. "They coordinate their random firing. Perhaps there is method in their madness." Morrison felt a spark of concern. Some of the Kethvar were starting to think. He activated his comm unit. "All squads maintain current fire patterns. Don't give them time to figure it out." The battle continued through the afternoon. The Kethvar made several attempts to advance, but each time they encountered the same problem. Human gunfire didn't need to hit them directly to stop their movement. The constant stream of bullets created zones that were simply too dangerous to cross. As the sun began to set, Morrison could hear frustration creeping into the alien communications. Their precision shots were finding targets when humans exposed themselves, but the Kethvar couldn't gain ground. "These creatures fight like a swarm," one alien complained. "They have no honor in individual combat." "Their weapons are crude," another added, "but they use them in unexpected ways." Morrison smiled. The Kethvar were starting to ask the right questions, but they didn't have the cultural framework to understand the answers. Their entire military doctrine was built around individual skill and precision. The concept of deliberately missing targets to achieve tactical goals was foreign to them. "Sir," Park called out, "we're getting low on ammunition." Morrison checked his own supply. They had enough for maybe another hour of sustained fire. "All squads prepare for controlled withdrawal. Use standard bounding overwatch." As the human forces began their tactical retreat, Morrison could hear the aliens discussing whether to pursue. Their conversation revealed their continued confusion about human capabilities. "They flee now," one alien observed. "Perhaps their weapons have finally malfunctioned completely. Or they realize they're inferior. Tactics cannot defeat us," another suggested. Morrison activated his comm, one final time before they moved out of range. "Kethvar Commander, this is Sergeant Morrison. You might want to think about what just happened here. We held your superior force in place for 6 hours. Ask yourself how we did that with such poor shooting." The alien channel fell silent for several seconds before their commander responded. "We will meet again, human. Next time we will be prepared for your unusual methods." As Morrison's squad retreated through the rocky terrain, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Kethvar commander was starting to understand something important. The aliens were excellent warriors, but they thought about warfare in completely different terms than humans did. The question was whether they would figure out the truth before the next battle. Commander Zexthul stood in the command center of the Kethvar flagship, studying the tactical displays from the New Geneva engagement. The holographic battlefield showed the positions of both forces throughout the 6-hour conflict. Something about the human behavior patterns troubled him deeply. "Analysis complete, Commander," reported Sub-Commander Veltar, her chrome-like skin reflecting the blue light from the displays. Human accuracy rate was approximately 12%. Most of their projectiles struck empty terrain or objects with no tactical value. Zexthul's elongated fingers traced patterns in the air above the display, yet they prevented our advance for an entire solar cycle. "How do you explain this contradiction?" The bridge crew exchanged glances. In Kethvar military doctrine, every shot served a purpose. Their warriors trained for years to achieve perfect accuracy. The concept of deliberately missing a target was not just foreign, it was actively offensive to their cultural values. "Perhaps," suggested Tactical Officer Corvesh, "their weapons are defective. Inferior manufacturing could explain the poor accuracy." "No." Zexthul highlighted several sections of the battlefield. "Observe the pattern. When our forces attempted to advance through this corridor, human projectiles consistently struck these specific coordinates. The randomness is too precise to be accidental." In the detention bay 3 decks below, Marine Private Danny Rodriguez sat across from his Kethvar interrogator. The alien's movements were fluid and graceful, like a dancer made of liquid metal. Her questions had been the same for hours. "Explain again this concept you call suppressive fire," the interrogator said. Her voice carried musical tones that would have been beautiful if Rodriguez wasn't a prisoner of war. Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, fatigue weighing on his shoulders. "Look, it's simple. We don't always shoot to kill. Sometimes we shoot to control where the enemy can go. The alien's head tilted in a way that suggested confusion. You waste ammunition deliberately? It's not waste if it works. Rodriguez tried to find words that would translate properly. Imagine you're trying to cross a river, but every time you step toward the water, someone throws rocks near your feet. You're not getting hit by the rocks, but you can't cross the river. But why not simply eliminate the rock thrower with precise fire? Rodriguez sighed. Because maybe there are 10 rock throwers and they're all behind cover. You can't see them clearly enough for a clean shot, but you can make the whole riverbank too dangerous to approach. The interrogator made notes on a device that looked like flowing liquid held in a rigid frame. Your explanation suggests intentional tactical inefficiency. This contradicts optimal warfare principles. Maybe your principles aren't the only way to fight. The alien stopped writing and stared at Rodriguez with large, multifaceted eyes. There is only one optimal solution to any tactical problem. Precision eliminates variables. Accuracy achieves objectives with minimal resource expenditure. Tell that to my squad leader. We held your guys in place for 6 hours. Back on the bridge, Zexthal was reviewing communications intercepts from the battle. The human radio chatter revealed coordination that seemed almost chaotic by Kethvar standards. Delta Team, put rounds on the north approach. Keep them honest. Bravo leader, need suppression on grid 4-4. They're getting ideas. All squads, make it rain on the left flank. Don't let them think they can move. Sub-Commander Veltar studied the transcripts. Their language patterns suggest emotional decision-making rather than calculated tactical analysis. Or, Zexthal said slowly, they use different terminology for concepts we don't understand. The command center's main display showed footage from Kethvar helmet cameras during the battle. Zexthal watched his warriors move with perfect coordination, each shot placed with mathematical precision. When they did hit human targets, the results were decisive and clean, but the humans rarely presented clear targets. They remained behind cover, exposing only weapon barrels and small portions of their bodies. When Kethvar forces attempted to advance, the air around them filled with projectiles that forced them back to cover. Run Simulation Protocol 7, Zexthal ordered. Model the battle using standard Kethvar tactical doctrine against an enemy employing human methods. The holographic display shifted, showing computer-generated versions of the conflict. Blue markers represented Kethvar forces using their traditional precision-based approach. Red markers showed human-style area suppression tactics. The simulation ran through multiple scenarios. In each case, the Kethvar forces became trapped in covered positions, unable to advance despite their superior accuracy. Fascinating, murmured Chief Analyst Mordek. The human approach sacrifices individual efficiency for collective control of battlefield geometry. Zexthal nodded slowly. They fight space rather than opponents. In the detention bay, Rodriguez was growing frustrated with his interrogator's inability to grasp basic military concepts. Look, he said, let me try a different approach. In your culture, what happens when it rains? The alien paused, clearly puzzled by the change in topic. Water falls from the sky. Individuals seek shelter or use protective equipment. Right, now imagine if instead of random rain, someone could make it rain exactly where they wanted. They couldn't control every single raindrop, but they could make specific areas too wet to walk through safely. An interesting metaphor, but weather control requires massive technological resources. But what if you didn't need to control individual raindrops? What if you just needed to create enough rain in the right places to change how people move? The interrogator's eyes seemed to shift focus as if processing new information. You suggest that imprecise application of force can achieve strategic objectives through cumulative area effect. Now you're getting it. Rodriguez leaned forward. We don't need to hit every target. We just need to make it too dangerous for you to be where we don't want you. On the bridge, Zexthal was reaching similar conclusions through tactical analysis. The simulation results were clear. Human-style suppressive fire could effectively control enemy movement even with low accuracy rates. Sub-Commander Veltar, compile a report on these findings. Mark it as preliminary analysis requiring further study. Sir, should we adjust our tactical doctrine based on this engagement? Zexthal considered the question carefully. Kethvar military tradition stretched back thousands of years. Their emphasis on individual precision and honor in combat was fundamental to their identity as warriors. Not yet, he decided. We need more data. One engagement with an unknown species is insufficient to challenge proven tactical principles. But privately, Zexthal was troubled. The humans had demonstrated something that Kethvar doctrine claimed was impossible: tactical success through intentional imprecision. It contradicted everything his people believed about warfare. The interrogation continued for several more hours, with Rodriguez patiently explaining concepts that the Kethvar translator struggled to process. Terms like covering fire, area denial, and psychological pressure had no direct equivalence in Kethvar military language. "Your methods seem wasteful," the interrogator concluded. "Efficient warfare eliminates enemies with minimum resource expenditure." "Maybe efficient isn't always effective," Rodriguez replied. "Sometimes the threat of being shot is more useful than actually shooting someone." "How can the threat be more valuable than the action?" Rodriguez thought for a moment. "If I shoot one of your guys, he's dead, but the rest can still fight. If I make it so none of your guys can move without risking death, then your whole unit is neutralized." The alien made more notes, but Rodriguez could see the confusion in her posture. These concepts simply didn't fit into Kethvar thinking patterns. As the ship's artificial day cycle ended, Zexthal stood alone in his quarters, studying star charts of the frontier region. The humans had established colonies on dozens of worlds along the border. If their tactical methods were consistent across their military, the Kethvar might face a very different kind of warfare than they had ever encountered. He activated his personal communication device and sent a coded message to High Command. The report was brief but concerning. "Human tactical doctrine requires immediate study. Traditional countermeasures may prove inadequate." The response came back within hours. "Continue analysis. Prepare for expanded engagement protocols." Zexthal gazed out at the stars, wondering what other surprises the humans might have in store. Their approach to warfare was unlike anything in Kethvar historical records. They seemed to understand something about combat that had escaped one of the galaxy's most successful military civilizations. The thought was deeply unsettling. The industrial world of Kepler 442b stretched out beneath the morning sky like a vast metal grid. Factories and processing plants covered most of the planet's surface, their smokestacks reaching toward gray clouds. Colonel Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Forward Operating Base Titan, watching Kethvar ships descend through the atmosphere like falling stars. "Intelligence estimates 3 full battle groups," reported Major Williams, his voice tight with tension. "That's roughly 15,000 Kethvar warriors." Chen nodded, her eyes never leaving the alien fleet. "And we have 4,000 Marines spread across 6 defensive positions. Not exactly even odds. The Kethvar had come in force this time. After the engagement on New Geneva, they seemed determined to prove that human tactics were nothing more than primitive luck." Chen had read the intelligence reports about their culture. Pride and honor drove everything they did, especially in warfare. "Ma'am," said Lieutenant Torres from the communications station, "we're picking up Kethvar command frequencies. They're not encrypting their signals. Patch me in. Let's hear what they have to say." The alien voices filled the command center, their musical tones carrying across the radio waves. Chen had learned enough of their language to follow basic conversations. "Ground Commander Zexthal to all battle groups," came a familiar voice. "Deploy in standard precision formation. We will demonstrate proper military doctrine to these undisciplined humans." Chen smiled grimly. Zexthal was the same commander from New Geneva. He had learned something from their last encounter, but apparently not the right lessons. "Weapons teams. Report status," Chen ordered. "Heavy machine gun nests operational," came the first response. "Overlapping fields of fire established across industrial sectors 7 through 12. Mortar teams in position," reported another voice. "Pre-plotted fire missions covering all major approach routes. Artillery support standing by," added the fire control officer. "We have ranging data for the entire AO." Chen watched through her binoculars as Kethvar forces began their assault. They moved with the same fluid grace she remembered from New Geneva, but now there were hundreds of them advancing across the factory complex. "All units. Commence suppressive fire patterns Alpha through Delta. Make them work for every meter." The human weapons opened fire simultaneously. Machine guns chattered from concealed positions, sending streams of bullets across open ground between the factory buildings. Mortar rounds began falling in predetermined zones, creating barriers of exploding steel and concrete. The Kethvar advance slowed immediately. Their warriors took cover behind industrial equipment and building walls, just as they had on New Geneva. "Fascinating," came Zexthol's voice over the radio. "They repeat their wasteful tactics on a larger scale." Chen activated her own transmitter. "Commander Zexthol, this is Colonel Chen. You might want to pay closer attention this time." "Colonel Chen," the alien replied, his tone carrying what sounded like amusement. "We have brought sufficient forces to overcome your crude methods. Precision will triumph over chaos. We'll see about that." The battle developed across multiple sectors of the industrial complex. Kethvar snipers took positions on tall factory structures, picking off individual human soldiers with deadly accuracy. Their energy weapons could punch through most cover, forcing the Marines to stay mobile and use concealment rather than protection. But the humans weren't trying to win a sniper duel. Their machine gun teams concentrated fire on specific buildings and walkways, making them too dangerous for Kethvar forces to occupy. Mortar teams dropped rounds into areas where aliens might advance, turning potential approach routes into killing fields. "Sir," reported Sergeant Kim from Sector 4, "the aliens are trying to move through the refinery complex. Request fire mission on Grid Papa 7. Artillery, you have Grid Papa 7. Make it hot." Explosions erupted among the refinery towers as 155mm shells detonated in precise patterns. The Kethvar forces in that area pulled back immediately, seeking safer routes. But there were no safer routes. Every path through the industrial complex was covered by overlapping fields of fire. The humans had turned the entire battlefield into a maze where only certain movements were possible. "Battle Group 2, advance through manufacturing sector," Zexthol ordered his forces. "Avoid the areas under direct fire." Chen monitored the alien communications, plotting their movements on her tactical display. The Kethvar were adapting, finding paths between the zones of suppressive fire, but they were moving exactly where she wanted them to go. "Weapons teams, shift fire to pattern Bravo. Channel them toward the processing plant." The machine gun fire adjusted, closing off some approach routes while opening others. The Kethvar forces naturally flowed toward the areas that seemed safest, the abandoned chemical processing facility in the center of the complex. "Ma'am," called Major Williams, "they're massing in the target zone. All 3 battle groups are converging on the processing plant." "Perfect." Chen activated her command frequency. "All units, this is Wildcat 6. Execute fire mission Thunderstorm." Danger close authorization granted. Every human weapon system on the battlefield opened fire simultaneously. Artillery shells screamed overhead. Mortar rounds arced through the sky, and machine gun tracers created geometric patterns of light across the industrial landscape. But they weren't shooting at the Kethvar forces directly. Instead, they were destroying the processing plant itself. Massive storage tanks exploded in chains of fire and steel. Chemical pipelines ruptured, sending toxic clouds across the facility. The entire complex began collapsing as support structures took precision hits from human artillery. The Kethvar warriors found themselves trapped in the middle of an industrial disaster. Their precision weapons were useless against falling debris and chemical fires. Warriors who had never retreated from individual combat fled in panic from environmental hazards they couldn't fight. "Impossible," came Zexthol's voice over the radio, now tight with shock. "They destroyed their own defensive position." "No," Chen replied calmly. "We destroyed your rally point. There's a difference." On the Kethvar command ship, tactical analyst Silendra stared at the battlefield displays in growing horror. The humans had somehow predicted exactly where Kethvar forces would concentrate, and had prepared a trap that used the environment itself as a weapon. "Commander," she called to Zexthol, "I believe we have severely underestimated human tactical capabilities." "Explain." Silendra pulled up the battle recordings, showing the progression of human fire patterns. "Observe their weapon deployment. Each phase of suppressive fire was designed to limit our movement options. They guided our forces into a predetermined location using our own tactical preferences against us." Zexthol studied the data, his elongated features showing confusion. "You suggest they deliberately allowed us to advance?" "Not allowed, directed. Every time our forces sought cover from their inaccurate fire, we moved closer to their intended target zone. They used our natural tactical responses to herd us like livestock. The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't been firing randomly at all. Every burst of gunfire, every mortar round, every artillery barrage had been calculated to influence HFY movement patterns. But this requires understanding of our tactical doctrine, Zexthul protested. How could they predict our responses so accurately? Perhaps, Silendra said quietly, because their methods were never random. We assumed their imprecision indicated incompetence, but what if it indicates a completely different approach to warfare? Back on the planet's surface, Colonel Chen watched HFY forces retreating from the burning chemical plant. They moved in good order, their discipline holding despite the shock of the trap. But they were moving along routes that human weapons had left open, routes that led away from strategic objectives. All units, maintain suppressive fire patterns. Don't let them regroup in sectors 2 or 5. The human weapons continued their carefully orchestrated symphony of destruction. Not shooting to kill, but shooting to control. The HFY forces found themselves being pushed steadily away from the human defensive positions. Colonel Chen, came Zexthul's voice over the radio, request temporary ceasefire for casualty evacuation. Chen considered the request. The HFY had taken heavy losses in the chemical plant collapse, but most were injuries rather than deaths. Granted, Commander. 2 hours. As medical shuttles descended from the HFY ships, Chen could hear alien communications filled with confused chatter. Their warriors were trying to understand what had happened to them. They fight the battlefield itself, one voice observed. Their weapons reshape terrain rather than eliminate. Enemies, added another. How do we counter an enemy that doesn't target us directly? Asked a third. Chen smiled as she listened to their confusion. The HFY were finally asking the right questions, but they still didn't have the cultural framework to understand the answers. The ceasefire ended with both sides pulling back to reassess. The HFY had learned that human tactics were more sophisticated than they appeared, but they still thought in terms of precision and individual targeting. Chen knew this was just the beginning. The next engagement would be different. The aliens were adapting, but they were still thinking like aliens. The real test would come when they faced human tactics they couldn't predict or counter. As night fell over the industrial tactical analyst, Silendra had not slept for 3 rotations. Her chrome-like fingers moved across holographic displays in the HFY command ship's analysis center, studying every detail of human combat recordings. The patterns were becoming clearer, and what she saw filled her with a mixture of admiration and dread. Computer Replay Engagement 774. Focus on human weapon deployment timing. The display showed the urban battle for Meridian City, where HFY forces had attempted to capture the civilian spaceport. What should have been a straightforward precision assault had turned into a nightmare of channeled movement and environmental manipulation. Silendra watched human weapons teams establish positions that seemed random at first glance. Machine gun nests placed in locations with poor fields of fire, mortar teams positioned where they couldn't see their targets directly, artillery observers stationed in buildings with no tactical value. But when HFY forces began their advance, the seemingly random positions revealed their true purpose. Each human weapon controlled a specific corridor or intersection. Together, they created a 3-dimensional maze that forced alien movement into predetermined patterns. Computer, highlight areas of human weapons fire that did not target HFY personnel directly. Red markers appeared across the battlefield display, showing thousands of rounds fired at empty spaces, building corners, and open ground. To HFY military doctrine, it looked like massive waste of ammunition. Now overlay HFY movement patterns. Blue lines traced the paths taken by alien forces during the battle. Silendra's breath caught in her throat as she saw the truth. The red markers, the supposedly wasted ammunition, formed perfect barriers that guided the blue lines exactly where the humans wanted them. By the eternal light, she whispered. They're not fighting us. They're conducting us. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Human forces weren't trying to kill HFY warriors directly. They were manipulating the flow of battle itself, using suppressive fire to create rivers of movement that flowed exactly where human commanders wanted them to go. In the Meridian City Government District, Commander Zexthul crouched behind the ruins of a decorative fountain, studying the human defensive positions. His advance had stalled 3 blocks from the city center, stopped not by superior firepower but by an invisible maze of bullets that made forward movement impossible. Battle Group Alpha, attempt advance through Commercial District, he ordered. Sir, came the reply. That route is under heavy suppressive fire. I know. Move through residential area instead. Zexthul watched his forces flow around the areas where human weapons concentrated their fire. The path through the residential district seemed clear, protected by the bulk of apartment buildings from direct human observation. But as his warriors moved deeper into the maze of streets and buildings, Zexthul began to notice something troubling. The humans weren't adjusting their fire to follow his forces. Instead, they maintained their original firing patterns, creating permanent barriers that remained constant regardless of Kethvar movement. Sir, reported Subcommander Veltar, our advance is becoming channeled. We have limited route options. Zexthul studied his tactical display. His forces were indeed being funneled into narrower and narrower corridors. Every time they tried to spread out, human weapons fire blocked their expansion. Not targeted fire that sought to kill them, but area fire that made entire zones too dangerous to enter. They're hurting us, he realized with growing alarm. All units halt advance. Maintain current positions, but it was too late. The momentum of 3 battle groups moving through urban terrain couldn't be stopped instantly. Kethavar forces continued flowing forward through the paths that human fire had left open. On the 43rd floor of the Meridian Financial Center, Colonel Chen watched the alien advance through her binoculars. The Kethvar were moving exactly according to the plan she and her staff had developed over weeks of preparation. Weapons coordination. This is Wildcat 6, begin Phase 3. The pattern of human fire shifted subtly. Some suppressive positions went silent while others increased their rate of fire. To an observer, it might look like random changes in ammunition supply or weapon malfunction. But the effect was precise. The channels through which Kethvar forces could move became narrower and narrower, all converging on a single objective, the central plaza where Meridian's government building stood. Ma'am, reported Major Williams from the Fire Direction Center, alien forces are now committed to final approach routes. All 3 battle groups are converging on target zone. Chen nodded, watching through her scope as thousands of Kethvar warriors flowed into the plaza like water through a funnel. Their movements were still tactically sound. They maintained proper spacing, used available cover, and advanced with disciplined coordination. They just didn't realize they were walking into the most perfectly prepared kill zone in human military history. In the command ship, Silendra had reached the same conclusion through pure analysis. Her fingers flew across the tactical displays as she traced probable human firing solutions for the Meridian City engagement. Computer, calculate optimal positions for area effect weapons targeting Central Plaza Convergence Point. The display lit up with firing solutions from dozens of concealed positions throughout the city. Every building, every rooftop, every underground position that could deliver effective fire into the plaza was marked in red. Estimated human weapons positions based on suppressive fire patterns, she commanded. New markers appeared, showing where human forces had been guiding the battle from. The positions formed a perfect circle around the plaza, with overlapping fields of fire that would turn the open space into a death trap. Communications. Get me Commander Zexthul immediately. Analyst Silendra, came Zexthul's voice through the static of battle communications. Report. Sir, you must withdraw your forces from the plaza immediately. The humans have constructed a... Her words were drowned out by the sound of human weapons opening fire simultaneously. Every machine gun, every mortar, every concealed rifleman that Chen had positioned throughout Meridian City fired at the same moment. But this time they weren't firing suppressive patterns. This time they were firing to kill. The central plaza became a storm of intersecting bullet streams. Kethavar warriors who had never faced such concentrated firepower found themselves caught in the open with nowhere to hide. Their individual precision weapons were useless against the wall of lead that surrounded them. Zexthul watched in horror as his carefully trained warriors fell under the coordinated fire. These weren't random casualties from lucky shots. This was systematic destruction of his entire force, orchestrated by an enemy that had been planning this moment since the battle began. All units, emergency withdrawal, he commanded. Break contact and retreat to secondary positions. But the human fire patterns had anticipated this response too. The same suppressive fire that had channeled Kethvar forces into the plaza now blocked their retreat routes. Warriors who tried to flee found themselves driven back toward the center of the kill zone. In the command ship, Silendra watched the tactical display with growing desperation. HFY forces were trapped in a carefully constructed geometric death trap. Every avenue of escape was blocked by precisely placed human fire. "Commander," she called over the radio, "the humans have been manipulating our entire tactical approach. Our movement patterns, our route selection, our positioning, all of it was guided by their suppressive fire doctrine. How is this possible?" Zexthul's voice carried shock and disbelief. "They don't fight individual opponents," Silendra explained, even as she watched the casualties mount. "They fight probability and movement dynamics. Every suppressive fire mission was designed to alter our tactical choices." The realization was devastating. The HFY military doctrine was built on the assumption that precision targeting was the optimal solution to any combat problem. The idea that an enemy might deliberately sacrifice individual accuracy to achieve strategic control had never occurred to them. "Their weapons don't target our warriors," Silendra continued. "They target our decision-making process itself." In the plaza, the slaughter continued. HFY warriors trained for millennia in individual combat. Excellence found themselves helpless against an enemy that fought space and time rather than people. "Commander, Zexthul made the hardest decision of his military career. All surviving units surrender positions and request immediate medical evacuation." The human weapons fell silent with mechanical precision. Colonel Chen's voice came over the radio, calm and professional. "HFY forces, this is Colonel Chen. Lay down your weapons and you will be treated according to military convention." As medical shuttles descended into the plaza, Silendra completed her analysis of the engagement. The humans had achieved total tactical victory, not through superior weapons or individual skill, but through superior understanding of how battles actually worked. They had turned the HFY strength, their disciplined tactical movement, into their greatest weakness. Every training exercise, every doctrine manual, every instinct that made HFY forces effective had been used against them. "Commander, Sil." The Treaty of Proxima Station was signed 6 months after the Meridian City engagement, but tactical analyst Silendra knew the real war was just beginning. Not a war of weapons and blood, but a war of ideas that would reshape how the HFY understood conflict itself. She stood in the newly constructed Joint Military Academy on Neutral Ground Station, watching young HFY officers struggle with concepts that had no equivalent in their language. The human instructor, a weathered colonel named Martinez, was attempting to explain suppressive fire doctrine to a classroom full of aliens who had never deliberately missed a target in their lives. "Think of it like this," Martinez said, gesturing toward a holographic battlefield display. "You don't need to kill the enemy to defeat them. You just need to control where they can go." A young HFY officer raised her hand, her chrome-like features showing confusion. "But Colonel Martinez, if you can control their movement, why not simply eliminate them directly? Surely death is more efficient than displacement." Martinez smiled patiently. "Officer Zixandra, show me where the enemy is on this display." The hologram showed a complex urban environment with multiple buildings and cover positions. Zixandra studied it carefully. "There are 17 probable enemy positions based on tactical terrain analysis." "Exactly. Probable positions. Now I can fire 17 precision shots and maybe hit 3 or 4 enemies if I'm lucky. Or I can fire 300 rounds and make all 17 positions too dangerous to occupy. But that requires significantly more ammunition expenditure. Does it matter if the result is complete area denial?" Silendra watched the exchange from the back of the classroom, remembering her own struggle to understand human tactical thinking. Even now, after months of study, the concepts felt alien and counterintuitive. In the advanced theory section, former Commander Zexthul was leading a discussion group of senior HFY officers. His military career had ended with the Meridian City disaster, but his experience with human tactics made him invaluable as an instructor. "The fundamental error in our thinking," Zexthul explained to his students, "was assuming that optimal meant precise. We believed that the most efficient weapon was one that eliminated one enemy with one shot. Is this not logically correct?" asked Sub-Commander Veltar, who had served under Zexthul during the human conflicts. "Only if your objective is to eliminate specific individuals. But what if your objective is to control territory? To deny access? To force enemy movement into predetermined patterns? Zexthal activated a battlefield simulation. Observe this scenario. The display showed a standard Kethvar tactical approach. Warriors moving with individual precision, each shot calculated for maximum effect. The simulation ran through engagement with human forces. Now observe the same scenario using human suppressive fire doctrine. The second simulation showed a dramatically different approach. Human forces created zones of continuous fire that didn't necessarily hit individual targets, but made large areas impossible to traverse safely. The result is the same, Zexthal continued. Enemy forces are neutralized. But the method challenges everything we thought we knew about optimal tactics. Feltar studied the simulation results. The humans achieve battlefield control through probability rather than precision. Exactly. They fight statistics, not soldiers. In another section of the academy, human instructors were learning just as much from their Kethvar counterparts. Colonel Chen found herself in a reverse classroom, studying alien precision techniques with the same intensity that Kethvar officers applied to suppressive fire doctrine. Your accuracy rates are extraordinary, she admitted to instructor Mordek. 97% hit probability at combat ranges we would consider impossible. Precision is the foundation of all tactical thinking, Mordek replied. Each shot must serve a specific purpose with measurable results. But what happens when you can't see your targets clearly? When they're behind cover or obscured by terrain, we wait for optimal firing solutions. Patience yields precision, Chen nodded thoughtfully. And that's exactly what we counted on. Your cultural emphasis on precision made your tactical responses predictable. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the Academy's communication center. Both instructors hurried to the main briefing room, where Admiral Harrison was addressing a joint assembly of human and Kethvar officers. Intelligence reports indicate the Vrex Empire is mobilizing forces along the frontier, Harrison announced. Their tactical doctrine emphasizes overwhelming numbers and aggressive assault tactics. This represents a common threat to both our species. The room buzzed with conversation as officers from both sides considered the implications. The Vrex were known for their brutal efficiency and complete disregard for casualties. They fought like a biological machine, throwing endless waves of warriors at their enemies until resistance collapsed. "Sir," called a human major, "request permission to propose joint tactical development." Granted. What if we combined Kethvar precision targeting with human suppressive fire doctrine? Use their accuracy to eliminate key targets while our area denial keeps their main force channeled into kill zones. A Kethvar commander stood up. The tactical integration would require unprecedented coordination between forces with completely different operational philosophies. Which is exactly why it might work, replied Colonel Martinez. The Vrex have experience fighting precision-based forces and swarm-based forces, but they've never faced an enemy that can switch between both approaches seamlessly. Silendra felt a strange excitement as she listened to the discussion. For the first time since the human conflicts began, she could see the potential benefits of tactical fusion, rather than just the challenge of understanding alien concepts. Over the following weeks, joint training exercises began developing hybrid tactics that combined the best elements of both military traditions. Kethvar snipers worked with human machine gun teams to create layered defensive systems. Human artillery provided area suppression while Kethvar precision strikes eliminated specific threats. The results were remarkable. In simulation after simulation, the combined force proved more effective than either side fighting independently. The Kethvar provided the surgical precision that human tactics often lacked, while humans provided the area control that made Kethvar precision even more devastating. But the real change was philosophical. Young officers from both species began thinking about warfare in completely new ways. Human cadets learned to appreciate the elegant efficiency of perfect accuracy. Kethvar students discovered the strategic power of controlled chaos. "It's not about being right or wrong," observed Cadet Jennifer Park during a mixed species discussion group. "It's about having more options." Her Kethvar counterpart, trainee Zilinth, nodded in agreement. Optimal tactics depend on mission parameters: precision for elimination, suppression for control, combination for maximum effectiveness. The first joint operation came sooner than expected. Vrex forces launched a surprise attack on the mining world of Kepler 438c, using their traditional swarm tactics to overwhelm the small garrison. The distress call reached both human and Kethvar forces simultaneously. Admiral Harrison and Fleet Commander Zarthek made the decision together, launched the first combined human-Kethvar military operation in galactic history. The battle for Kepler 438c became a textbook example of tactical fusion. Human forces established suppressive fire patterns that channeled Vrex swarms into kill zones, where Kethvar precision weapons could eliminate maximum numbers with minimum ammunition expenditure. When Vrex forces adapted to the suppressive patterns, Kethvar snipers shifted to anti-material roles, destroying Vrex heavy weapons and communication equipment with surgical precision. When the aliens concentrated on hunting the snipers, human area denial fire protected their Kethvar partners while maintaining battlefield control. The Vrex, faced with an enemy that could seamlessly transition between tactics they had never seen combined, fell back in confusion after suffering unprecedented casualties. In the aftermath of the victory, Silendra found herself working alongside Colonel Chen to write the first joint tactical manual in galactic military history. The document would become required reading at military academies across both species' territories. "You know," Chen said during one of their late-night writing sessions, "I never thought I'd be collaborating with someone who used to analyze ways to defeat us." Silendra's multifaceted eyes showed what might have been amusement. "And I never imagined learning tactical principles that contradicted everything I believed about warfare." "Maybe that's the real victory," Chen replied. "Not defeating each other, but discovering that our different approaches make us stronger together." The manual they produced became more than just a tactical guide. It represented a fundamental shift in how two species understood conflict, cooperation, and the nature of military excellence. Years later, when new alien species encountered the human-Kethvar alliance, they found themselves facing something unprecedented in galactic history, an enemy that could fight with perfect precision when necessary and controlled chaos when optimal. Switching between approaches with fluid adaptability, the galaxy had witnessed the birth of a new form of warfare, one that valued both individual excellence and collective effectiveness.